So, space, the final frontier and all of that. It's a very popular setting for all types of games and stories. Like you've got your grand space operas with immense galaxy-spanning empires that won't listen to warnings about troubles on the way, no matter how hard you try.
Ah yes, Reapers!
Then there's your classic military action sci-fi with a satirical take on our inevitable upcoming totalitarian dystopian future.
I'm doing my part!
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part too.
Also, space westerns, where life on the frontiers is hard and your past is probably going to catch up to you in the end, no matter how hard you try to escape it. I mean, even some mostly fantasy stories bring in some elements from space sci-fi now and again. Like, a lot of these ideas in space sci-fi stories are so ingrained in popular thinking that it's not even considered if humanity is going to expand out into space, but more like when. Which, as easy as all those stories make it seem, space is actually a really dangerous place that if you make one mistake in, will kill you very quickly. And a game that's really good at showing how unforgiving and dangerous space can be is FTL, a roguelike that has you as a captain of a Federation crew in the middle of a widespread rebellion trying to make your way back to High Command. So you can give them information that could turn the tide of the war against the rebels, which the feds are losing. But not only are you trying to survive the perils of space along the way, with limited fuel and a very understaffed ship, also nearly every ship you encounter along the way is trying to kill you, while a much larger rebel fleet is slowly catching up to you in each sector you travel in. Which is going to force you to make some life or death decisions at nearly every point in your journey, since you don't actually have enough fuel to make it the whole way unless you make some risky choices. And you will probably make the wrong choices a lot, and die many times. But as this in-game tip says, death, aka losing, is part of the fun. No, I'm serious. While the game is hard, it's also really addictive because starting over is mostly quick and painless. Well, for you. Your crew in your last run probably went through the opposite of that. But on the plus side, after a few noble sacrifices from them, you'll start figuring out how to turn the odds in your favour. With different builds from random weapons and crew members you'll get along the way, while going sector to sector and make it further into the game with each run. Until eventually you'll make it near the end, where there'll be a very tense boss fight that will test if your tactics are solid and if you can make the right last second calls that'll finally get you a victory. Which, if you manage, will unlock more ships with different weapons and systems for you to try even more strategies to keep that addictive loop of just one more run going. This is exactly the experience the devs Subset Games were going for when making FTL. They wanted you to feel like a captain commanding a ship going on a super thrilling journey across space, where you're just making it by the skin of your teeth and you're not exactly sure what you'll be up against next, which would force you to adjust your tactics to the different enemies and situations you come across. They did a really good job, as even though I've gotten to the end a few times fighting against the rebel flagship, I still get a thrill every time I fight against it, as I'm never 100% sure if I've gotten just the right combo of weapons and crew and systems to beat it. Not to mention I could still make a wrong choice at a critical moment in the fight. Like, making a boss you've beaten before in a game still feel intimidating after multiple runs is a very hard thing to do. Not many games can do that. And I think shows that Subset Games were making something special when cooking up this game, which they got the inspiration for from board games like Red November and Battlestar Galactica, that had mechanics that had the feel they wanted in their game, which after tweaking and iterating a lot eventually got working in FTL. Like, I've seen Tim Kaine talk about taking ideas from tabletop RPGs and board games and putting them into video games a fair bit and seeing what works and what doesn't. It makes sense since it's quicker and easier to iterate on a slightly complicated board game mechanic than maybe making it from scratch in a video game. Also, have you seen some of the mechanics these tabletop RPGs are coming up with nowadays? They're amazing! Like, if you want to see some of them, go check out the channel Quinn's Quest to see a nice breakdown of some of these great mechanics. But anyway, before I get too distracted, let's get back to FTL. The game looks pretty simple on the surface, with a pixel art style that's got an almost calm vibe to it, with your little crew members just chilling and working at their stations, doing their thing, and making sure the endless vacuum of space stays on the outside of the ship. And the visuals outside seem calm too, though you will run into asteroid fields that bombard you endlessly, or planets that might have help for you, or something else on them, or blazing stars that are so hot they constantly set your ship on fire, and also dark murky purple nebulas that have dangers hiding in them. So with all that going on, it's a good thing the UI is easy to pick up on with all the power your systems and shields are using, as keeping things simple helps a lot when things start getting more hectic in the middle of life or death situations, like when you have to manage your crew putting out fires or fixing shields to save the ship from taking damage, or repair hull breaches that are sucking all the air out. Oh, and fighting intruders on your ship who will mercilessly go room to room murdering your crew and destroying the life support systems. Like, if something is going wrong, you'll be able to see at a glance where the issue is and try and do something about it, which shows the game is good at giving a lot of nice visual feedback for problems. It's a really good example of the game's visuals, UI, and gameplay working together very well. Also, the game's music helps with this, as it's chilled most of the time while travelling and exploring, which does help a bit with getting your composure after a near-death situation. Though it is urgent during fights, without stressing you out too much, just enough to let you know that you need to be paying attention. And the sound effects for all the different weapons firing also help with the gameplay too, as you'll know without looking at the enemy what's being fired at you after hearing them a few times. Like the thumpy sound effects the Rebel flagship makes when offloading missiles at you. That instantly makes me go oh shit when I hear them. That's pretty solid sound design. Though this is all just a boost for the great gameplay, which if you're going to play this game for the first time you might need to adjust your mindset just a little to get into it. Like I have a bit of experience playing slightly difficult games, maybe not as much as you watching the video, for all I know you're the king or queen of gaming, which if you are, hi your majesty. So when I suggest the following, I don't say this lightly, but for your first time playing the game, set the difficulty to easy and disable the advanced edition content. Because for as simple as the game looks, there will be a lot you'll have to pay attention to during fights, and the easy setting will give you more space to make mistakes and learn at the start. Also, turning off the advanced edition content will give you a chance to get a handle on the basic systems in the game before getting into stuff like hacking and mind control, and even more types of weapons. Like you're still probably gonna die on easy. The easy difficulty setting in this game is closer to a normal difficulty setting in most other games. Though you don't need to listen to me, if you're pro at roguelikes then go for normal. I'm just saying if this is your first time playing a game like this, then starting off on normal difficulty is probably gonna go like this. Maybe you're into that, I don't judge. Also, each run through the game is quick enough that if you do find things are too easy, you can just turn it up on your next run and enable the advanced stuff. So there's no harm in just easing yourself into the game. But let's start off with the basics of gameplay. You will slowly be chased down in each sector you travel to by a massive rebel fleet. So you'll want to get to the map's exit point to escape. However, before making a dash for it, you'll want to explore as much as you can, because you'll need to find resources to make it further into the game. Remember, you started off with a low tank of fuel and not enough crew members for your ship. Plus your ship is going to need some upgrades along the way to survive the trip, which makes it so you have to think a bit about the route you take to the exit so you can maximize the number of places you visit for fuel and scrap before the rebels catch you. You'll also be managing your crew members working at different systems on your ship as you travel, and depending on your crew's skill level they can give a buff to those systems. So shields and weapons will recharge faster and having a better pilot will give you more evasion. All that good stuff. They'll gain experience by working at those stations, but only while under fire. Hey, nothing makes you learn faster than a life or death situation, right? You can gain crew along your journey from events or hiring them at stores. Some come with a lot of leveled up skills already, so you don't need to train them with near-death experiences. Also, depending on the species of crew you have, they can have some unique attributes, like rockmen are slow but have extra HP and are immune to fire, or the mantis, who are fast and do extra attack damage in melee fights, but really suck at fixing stuff. And the NG, who are great at fixing nearly anything but can't fight to save their life. That's just a few. There's still the psychic slugs who aren't too trustworthy, or the Zoltan who are energy beings who have ascended from being mere fleshy mortals to being great spare batteries for your ship. Then there's the chill crystal cousins, the rockmen, and last the Lanius, who are so metal they don't even need air to exist. Oh, and humans too, I guess. Nothing special about them, they just get XP slightly faster than all the other species. You'll learn quickly what crew is best for each of the systems on your ship and what situation suits them best. Like the Mantis and the Rockmen aren't the best at repairing things, but if intruders board your ship, they'll be in for a hard fight. And if you get a teleporter, you can use your Mantis and Rockman crew as offense, not just defense. But more on that later. The other thing you'll be managing on your ship are different power levels on various systems and upgrading them to get further into a run. Though you'll never have quite enough power to have everything you want online, even late into a run. So you'll need to min-max power usage a bit to get the most out of your systems. And during a fight these systems will either be damaged or go offline, which means you need to decide what to fix first, like maybe the shields seem like a priority, but if you have no air, your crew isn't going to last very long. Well, most of them. Also, you'll be multitasking a fair bit as you usually have a lot of problems to deal with all at once, like systems going down, intruders on your ship, and even the occasional fire, and that's all happening while you're managing power on your ship. It can be a lot to deal with all at once, which is why the game gives you the option to pause as much as you want. You'll need to use it quite a bit to help make all that second by second multitasking manageable. Like, you can try and not use it, but with how much is happening in this game all at once, it can melt your brain just a little. Though maybe you're a multitasking pro and can handle it. Timing is also super important in this game, like shields tend to only go down for a few seconds during fights. So coordinating your shots to go specifically for that opening and making it happen more often can be make or break for a lot of the fights, which gives off a very Star Trek feel to the combat where you're using the tools and weapons you have to look for intelligent solutions to get around the enemy's defenses. Speaking of weapons, the game gives quite a variety of them for you to use, from your standard laser weapons that can wear down shields, which also can be used to focus down specific enemy systems and just do hull damage. Though you'll need a fair number of them firing fairly regularly against an enemy with high level shields to do any damage. So maybe you'd want to pair your lasers with missiles or bombs that go straight through shields and can hit enemy systems directly and do a bit of direct damage too. Like, they aren't perfect either, as they do require ammo, and depending on how your run is going, you can run out of them pretty quickly if you use them too much. But using them sparingly and together with lasers can just be enough to bring down the shields quickly and take out the enemy's weapons, giving you a big advantage in a fight. You'll see that a lot in this game, where it tends to be better to use a mix of weapons to cover for the weaknesses of another. Like, there are also iron weapons which don't do direct damage but can disable or slow the recovery rate of systems like enemy shields, so they go down longer, or if you use enough of them, keep them down the whole fight. Or if you want to be a bit of a pyromaniac, use a fire beam to set multiple fires across the enemy ship. There are even drones you can use that will fire on enemies with all these types of weapons too. Also, each of these weapons have different versions that have various charge times and use different amounts of power, which will force you to think of the pros and cons of using them. Like, you might get a powerful weapon on a run, but maybe you don't have enough power to use it, or it takes a little too long to charge on a fight to be useful, so you can either store it for later or sell it, which you'll get the chance to do in the random stores you'll come across on your travels that let you buy stuff using the scrap you collect from fights along the way, while also filling up on fuel and ammo. The stores will also let you tweak your build a bit by buying the right weapons, systems, and augmentations you might need, if you get lucky with the random stock that gets generated. Oh wait, I haven't mentioned augmentations yet. Okay, these can be pretty powerful and can help boost the strength of your ship if you get the right ones. Like, say if you get the automated reloader one, you'll get a 10% boost to all your weapons' fire rates. Oh, and if you get multiples of these, they stack, so that powerful weapon that took forever to charge can now actually be useful in a fight. But you can only fit 3 augments on your ship at once, and there's lots to pick from that are very useful apart from just firing faster. You've got your shield charge booster, which lets your shields recover faster and are also stackable, or the scrap recovery arm, which lets you get a bit more scrap after each fight. That does add up over the course of a run and will maybe let you afford that weapon or system you've been looking for in the stores. Or there's the explosive replicator, which gives you a 50% chance of not using ammo on weapons that need it, so now you can use your more powerful missiles or bombs more often. And that's only a few, there are a ton of them in the game that are not even available in the stores. These ones you'll need to go on side quests to get them from random events you'll come across in the game, like the Zoltan shield, which adds an additional layer of shields to your ship, prevents hacking, mind control, and enemies teleporting on your ship while it's still up. These events you'll come across can be anything from a distress call to a little side trading, or coming across 2 NG ships who are down to smash into each other for reasons. All of which you'll get a choice on how to deal with, which will affect the outcome of the event. Some can be positive or negative, like it's your call on what to do if someone asks to help with giant alien spiders, but be warned, they are no joke. You even get to make some during fights, like the enemy crew can call you all of a sudden just before you're about to destroy them and offer to surrender with some rewards to sweeten the deal. And depending on your mood you could accept or...
perhaps. But not today.
It can be hard to decide what choices to make with these events, as it's not always clear what the best response is, which could be frustrating. But if you have the right crew member aboard or the right equipment, you'll get the blue option, which nearly always has the best outcome, which is the game gently encouraging you to get as much variety in your ship's crew and loadout as you can get away with. Because the fun in this game comes from trying out all the different combinations of crew, weapons, and systems. Like, every ship and crew layout has something it's really good at, but other things it also sucks at, that you'll need to figure a way around or just maximize its strengths to compensate for. Like, the starting Federation ship is a good all-rounder, but lacks variety in its crew and weapons at the start, so it won't be great at anything, but it won't be terrible at anything either. But if you specialize it to one strategy or another, it can be a great little ship. Or even when you unlock the Federation cruiser, which has a very powerful main weapon, though it takes really long to charge, which also means if you want to make it viable later on in your run, you will have to upgrade it and dedicate more power to it. And that means you're going to have to give up on some other systems you might normally get, since overall you'll have less power for those. So you'll have to build around it. all the alien ships you can unlock have these pros and cons too, which makes it fun coming up with different strategies. Like the Mantis ship has no hard-hitting weapons but does come with a teleporter and Mantis crew members, who if you remember are great melee fighters, so you can use them to wipe out your enemy's crew or systems. It's a risky way to play though, as at the start you'll kinda play by the skin of your teeth to kill the enemy crew, but as your Mantis crew level up, they'll hit harder so it becomes easier. And if you're lucky, maybe you'll pick up an augment like the reconstructive teleport, which heals your crew when teleporting and makes it easier to send them back into the fight quicker. Though it's not a perfect strategy since there are enemy ships that are controlled by AI with no crew, so you can't beam over a team to do war crimes. Also, these ships have no air, so most of your crew wouldn't last that long on there anyway. That means you're going to need some weapons as a plan B in those situations. And including some weapons in your boarding tactics can be very effective too, like using a fire beam to turn the insides of the enemy ship into an inferno, and then teleporting rockmen over to fight the enemy crew while the fire is raging around them. Remember, rock dudes don't take any fire damage. Which, now that I'm thinking about it, the game actually rewards brutal tactics like that, since destroying an enemy ship will get you less scrap than if you manage to wipe out the enemy crew. So the game kind of encourages you to think of the most terrible ways to kill your enemies without destroying their ship. Like having them mauled to death by aliens with claw arms, or just having to set the ship on fire to have it rage out of control to cook everyone to a crisp. And there is another way, which is pretty twisted, and that's to destroy the enemy ship's oxygen system that will very slowly suffocate the enemy crew to death. Which can be even more horrific if the enemy has a clone bay instead of a medical one, since it'll keep cloning new crew members to the ship just to have them suffocate and die again. And I mean, we are supposed to be playing the generic Federation types in the story, right? But just what type of Federation are we playing as? Well, the game never really goes into too much detail, which is fine for this type of game since the gameplay is the focus. Though if you do pay attention, there is actually some interesting stuff going on in the background. Like as you encounter the rebels, you'll get hints about what the war might be about, which is that the rebels didn't want aliens being part of the Federation anymore. And this hate of aliens might come from a previous war where the Mantis invaded the Federation and maybe did some war crimes against humans. These little bits of story come from the dialogue and events and encounters with enemies and the different aliens. They actually do a really good job with setting up the universe with just how everyone reacts to you. Like the NG and the Zoltan are very much in favor of the Federation, and you can see that from their actions. Like you might occasionally fight against them, but it's usually a misunderstanding that leads to the conflict. And events involving them tend to have them being bros and helping you out, but not so much the rebels will go to war with them, of course. Like this one event reveals that the NG was secretly working on making a stealth ship for the Federation, even though it could get them in big trouble with the rebels. There are also little details you might notice, like the Mantis tend to have NG slaves on their ship since they suck at fixing stuff, or that the slugs tend to hang out in nebulas because their telepathic abilities give them an edge over other ships that use sensors that don't work in those nebulas. Stuff like that shows really good attention to detail, even though the game could probably get away without it. Though I do like it more when games make mechanics and stories work together, it makes it easier to get immersed into the game for me. Like for instance, the rebels seem to have a big advantage over the Federation just in sheer numbers, as you're constantly on the run from their much larger fleet that just keeps spreading through the galaxy. But all their ships have humans and no aliens on them, so how are they managing to get enough crew for this massive fleet, when compared to the Federation that lets any alien crew join up? Well, as you play, you'll get a strong hint as to why this is, as you'll fight a lot of rebel ships that are just run by AI. Which explains why they have such a large fleet, they're just mass producing AI controlled ships. And all this is stuff you can pick up from just playing the game, as it's never outright said that this is what's happening, just strongly implied. Like you're never really told what exactly is this important information your ship is carrying that could save the Federation, just that it has something to do with the rebel flagship. Though making some educated guesses, it's probably that the rebel flagship might be the central control for all the AI ships in the rebel fleet, and that taking it out will get rid of those ships, which will take away the big advantage the rebels have over the Federation and turn things around in the war. It also tracks with the final fight in the game, which is against the rebel flagship, that if you manage to wipe out the enemy crew on, the fight becomes harder to deal with since all the systems switch to running on AI. See what I mean about the story and mechanics working together? It just feels right. Like to me, doing a run in this game feels like you're playing through a multi-part story arc that you'd get at the end of a season of Star Trek or something. I mean, it's got all the elements of one. High stakes with big consequences, and using intelligent solutions to overcome whatever problems may be encountered, and maybe some moral questions asked about the journey too. Like for a small roguelike that's mostly mechanics focused, it's doing a lot right with the little bits of story it's got going, which I think is just great. This game does still get mentioned now and again, and is still fairly popular. Like, I wouldn't call it a hidden gem or anything, but its significance to gaming is a little understated, I feel. Since it did help with the big explosion in roguelikes in the mid-2010s, that's now one of the more popular genres of games. And the exact formula in FTL hasn't really been copied. Like, there are a lot of great roguelikes out there, but none of them really give the same vibe or feel as FTL. Like, there could be a better version of this game out there, but I haven't come across it just yet. Which to me means Subset Games made something special that has really stood the test of time so far, and should be appreciated. So if you haven't given this game a go, definitely give it a try. Okay, so if you've made it this far into the video, thanks for checking it out, and if you want to support the channel, then like and subscribe and maybe share it around. Thanks for watching, see you next time.